This is another story which was told to me by some people in the Arizona state government who would have nothing to gain from making a story up like this, and instead would have a lot to lose due to people ridiculing them. The story goes as follows. About 10 years ago, this person and his wife were in the backwoods area in a very isolated region not far from Sedona. They were planning on camping in the area and were looking for a nice place to set up camp. They hiked about 3 or 4 miles into the back country and were on government lands that belonged either to the Bureau of Land Management or the U.S. Forest Service. Anyway, as they reached a clearing in a scenic spot, they stopped and started to make camp. As they did, they both felt very uneasy, as if someone was watching them. The feeling began to get so intense, they both decided to pack back up and hike a little further. As they did, they came to an area where they heard lots of people talking, but no one was around. While they were walking, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a large tank was sitting right in front of them, running with about 20 military personnel running around in a frenzy. Curiously, they approached the soldiers and asked what was going on and if it was some kind of exercise. Immediately, they both had automatic rifles shoved into their faces, and a barrage of questions came from an angry man in uniform. He very aggressively asked, "How the hell did you end up here? And what are you doing here?" The man threatened them with arrest, and they both explained they were simply hiking and they came across this scene. The man explained he was a state official and well-known and demanded to know what was happening. The military man, still with a rifle pointed at them, said, "This is none of your goddamn business, and if you want to go back to your lives, you better get the hell out of here right now." So they both quickly packed up as quick as they could and left there. Now here is something that is strange. The man told me that on the military guy's shoulder was a symbol of an upside-down triangle with a snake in it. On the outside of the triangle was the earth. The patch said Special Forces and also had some kind of very strange writing he described as being like hieroglyphics. He later told me it reminded him of the symbols that they said they found at Roswell by the witnesses there. He said the tank was most likely an Abrams tank and that it did say U.S. Army on the side. He later asked someone in the state National Guard, and he was told by the person that it was classified information that they did not know much about. But it had to do some kind of underground base and testing in the area. Once again, this is only from what I was told, and I did not witness it myself, but when I was told the story, it resonated as true to me, since the person telling me had nothing to gain from it, and I do not think they would want to make up such a story to bring unwanted attention onto themselves.
Kinda short, but only paranormal thing that's ever happened in my life, personally. Regularly taken along to visit some of my parents' college friends. As a kid, fun times. Got to eat some of the pizza while they had a few beers. We'd play cards or board games or watch movies. One friend, we'll call him D, always drank juice instead because he was a recovering alcoholic and dealt with depression, but had recovered from that as well. He was fine now, basically happy and healthy as any of the rest of them. One of these gatherings, he's talking to my mom, and she calls me over, shows me a Polaroid D said he took the other day. There's a UFO in the sky in the picture. Classic flying saucer. Exactly what you imagine when you think of one. Now, remember that this is the 9DS. And this was a man who didn't even own a computer of any kind. The photo was a Polaroid. It wasn't fake or doctored, is my point. He wasn't the kind of guy to do stuff like that, and he didn't have the means, even if he wanted to. Anyway, Mom mentions wanting to show a friend of hers who's a big believer in extraterrestrial life. D kind of smiles but says no, and that he doesn't want a lot of people knowing or talking about it. Mom laughs and says she can't even tell my dad. D stays serious and says probably not. Actually, he just wanted to tell her because he knew that if he asked her to keep it quiet, she would, and she did. Only reason I knew is because I was a little shy in the group and clung to her like the little kid I was. Months or maybe a full year later, our house is getting weird phone calls. Just silent, then a hang-up. One finally talks. It's D. Hear them talking about making plans, visiting somewhere. Heard him mention a park in Gastonia, North Carolina fruitcake. And when D could stay with us, or when they could drive out there. D is clearly talking a lot. Dad is mostly listening, just replying or going yo unless there was a question. Eventually they hang up. Dad just stares for a bit, not working on whatever he was doing on his computer anymore, just staring past it like he's in very deep thought. Freaked me out. Ask if he's alright. Says, oh yeah, I'm fine son. Which freaked me out more, because he almost always called me by my shortened name. Only ever called me son if he was angry with me or if he was sad or worried. Eventually he gets up and talks with Mom. They close the door, which always meant it was something serious or bad they didn't want to worry me with. Weeks go by, no Gastonia trip. More phone calls talking about it, but never happens. Phone calls stop after a while. Things were normal after that, but I did hear my dad talking about D calling him at work and saying, you remember when Mom is looking at him like she's wondering what he was meaning. Eventually another of their friends, we'll call him K, came by. I think I remember he was driving back from somewhere, and our house was on the way, so he stopped in. They were talking, and Mom said, how is everybody? And he just goes, well, D's drinking again. First thing he said, Dad said, yeah, we heard. K asked, who told you? And my dad said he could just tell from talking to him, and said he's stressed out. They talked a little more about it, then other stuff, and then eventually they said good night, and he left. This is the last thing I remember that's related to this, but I did notice even as a kid that the group gatherings stopped. They were always at D's house. Years and years later, as a young adult, I remembered all of this. The photo, how weird it made everyone act, and eventually I just asked my mom whatever happened to everyone. She got sad and said they just drifted apart. Then I asked about D specifically. Her face got all lost, like she was thinking. Then she asked what I was hoping she would, if I remembered that photo she showed me. I said yes, and asked why it ruined things how it did. I think I asked if she told anyone else about it. She said no, but that he did, and it got him in trouble. She said she got a bad feeling as soon as she saw that photo, because it was just so simple and real. She told me that the conversation he had on the phone with my dad was about getting him out of Dodge, and that he was definitely drinking, but that my dad said he sounded crazy, and it scared the shit out of him. He told her in private he was ducking seeing him, and made excuses to get out of that trip to the park in Estonia. After a while, D just vanished, like into thin air, totally disappeared. Another friend of the group, we'll call her M, said she was really worried about him because he called her one night and was crying, which he never did. D was a big, tough kind of guy. She said she heard a Pink Floyd album playing loud over the phone and knew he only played that when he was feeling depressed. She told my parents he said he was scared people were coming to arrest him, but then said kill. She said my dad said he was afraid if he had gone on that trip, that he would have disappeared with him. Now I'm more than aware that this could be a more average situation. Maybe he was bipolar and had some kind of episode, got drunk, went on a hike, and got lost and died. But what he said on the phone to him and the way my mom talked about it brought home a lot of stuff she always told me. To be careful what you say around government types, to keep a low profile. We used to laugh about going off the grid, but she would always say at the end, it's always safer to not leave a footprint. That's why this creeps me out. Felt like this whole thing resonated with her in a big way when she was younger, and maybe she was trying to half warn me about this kind of caution. I wonder where that photo is now.
I used to have night terrors where I was paralyzed while being harassed by something until I agreed to speak to it with respect. Prior to this I was always afraid of the dark because it always seemed like something was there when the lights went out, I could hear things move, etc. I'm an atheist and don't believe in the supernatural, so I acknowledge I'm probably just crazy or falling victim to some psychological effect, but things have taken a turn. I had a day terror. I froze while in bed in the middle of the day, and the entity just casually came into my apartment through my window, like a burglar. It looked human-like, thin, shiny black tar substance for skin, pointed ears, yellow and black eyes, and kept grinning without blinking. It was just walking around, talking to itself, and to me, as if it had known me, as if we knew each other. It explained it was both real and a manifestation of my mind, implying in the conversation that what I saw was a projection meant to replace what I couldn't see. He also told me I was both crazy and not crazy, but it didn't make a difference, and he assured me that his existence was not my fault, not limited to me. The discussion we had led me later to look some things up online, which resulted with me looking up ancient demons, psychology, etc. I ended up finding a giant necropolis, satellite imagery, that no one had ever seen before. I contacted that country's academics, and yeah, a giant discovery. When they asked how I had found this place, I told them I had a night terror which led me to do some searching. They actually weren't confused in the slightest. The place I had found was actually a cult site for the dead for a millennia, and it had dedications to both Mot, the god of death, and the jinn, dark smokeless fire beings. The discovery will be made public in a few years, as they already have people excavating on it now.
This one is bizarre. Anon journeys to the Amazon and experiences a fucking weird abduction. It's a fun read if you like aliens and monsters. Okay, a little backstory. I am a reptile enthusiast, and until recently I bred, sold, and collected large pythons. In 2015 I joined a reptile expedition through the Amazon jungle led by some of the world's top herpetologists, reptile experts. It was a dream come true for me, and long story short, I went and had a blast. Some of the people I met there are still my closest friends to this day. I missed the expedition the following year, and I promised myself I wouldn't miss the next one. So 2017 comes around. I see the advertisement for the trip on Facebook and boom, my credit card comes out and I book a flight. The trek would start and end in a city in Peru called Iquitos, which you could only reach by boat or plane. There were 3 lodges we would be staying at on our way, with 1 night planned at the first lodge, 2 nights at the second, and 2 nights at the third. So the day I arrive at Iquitos I get acquainted with everybody and check into my room. It was only meant to function as a place to sleep, since the point of the trip was to spend the whole day enjoying the wilderness of the Amazon. The layout of the rooms and the lodge is extremely important to the story, so let me explain it briefly. The rooms were all the same, maybe 8 feet by 8 feet, and they were all arranged in a row. There were 13 total, just a long lodge of single rooms. No ceilings, just a big canopy that covered all of the rooms. The back wall near the head of the bed was actually only a half wall with a curtain that covered the rest of the way up. Also, there were these stairs that came up out of the jungle right up to the center of the lodge. Anyway, we mostly did our own exploring during the day, and since it was our first day, a bunch of people stayed out really late exploring. They didn't get back till 5 a.m. But by the end of the second night, even those of us that hadn't been out so late the previous day were pretty tired. I think we called it quits around 2 a.m. Now here is where shit starts to get weird. I don't know if this first thing has anything to do with what happened next, but as I was settling into bed, there was persistent knock on the door to my room, and the person outside was calling me by my nickname. Nobody there knew me by that name, not even the guy leading the trip, who was a friend of mine. Since it was late and I didn't really want to get out of bed, I pretended to be asleep, ignoring the knocking until it went away. As I'm lying there, I realize that the curtain behind me on the half wall is kind of open. I get up to close it, but take a moment to open it a bit and look out at the jungle outside. As I'm looking, I suddenly get a feeling. I don't know if it was intuition or what, but it was like something telling me, shut up, close the curtain, and get in bed. I don't know where that feeling came from, but I did just that. And within 5 minutes I hear a mechanical beeping nearby. 3 beeps with an echo. Beep, beep. Beep, beep. Beep, beep, dot. Right after that, I began to hear grunting. At first I thought it was a really big animal, but as I listened I realized I could make out at least 3, grunting to each other. Then one of them let out a reptilian-sounding hiss. The jungle is completely silent except for the sounds of these creatures. I'm thinking that there is no way anyone would be able to sleep through this. I don't really have a very good reference of time, but after maybe 30 minutes of listening to these things walk around outside, I hear a strange sound. Kinda like an R2-D2 type of sound, like a computer. But I hear that sound and it zooms right over my room, and I see that it's coming from some type of orb. It zooms all the way to the first room at the end of the lodge. I was in the 12th room at the opposite end. So this thing goes over room 1, and I see that it shined a light straight down into the room, like it was signaling that room. At that point the whole lodge began to shake, and I heard something hurrying up the stairs, the ones that lead up from the jungle to the lodge. Whatever it is, it sounds like it jumps over the wall into the room 1. Now I'm freaked out. I start thinking in my head, how is this all going to turn out? I'm imagining the Channel 4 news report of a group of expeditioners going missing in the Amazon. I don't really know how much time passed. Maybe 10 minutes? Then the sound and the orb move over room 2 and I hear the same thing as before. Something jumps into room 2. At this point, I start thinking about my mom, and what she's going to think if I die in the Amazon. I get out my notepad as quietly as I can and I write her a letter saying that something is outside of the rooms, but I am going to stay inside, and that if I end up going missing it's because they came and took me. Shit. Didn't realize how long it was. Sorry. Anyways, this sequence happens maybe 4 or 5 times. When it gets to room 6 this time the thing jumps in the room, and I don't know what caused it but this thing gave a loud shriek. I can only imagine what is going on and what this thing looks like. I am sitting in my room in complete darkness, complete silence, with no defense, scared out of my mind. It's eventually going to get to my room. The orb gets to the room right next to mine and shines its light. I hear the thing jump the wall into the room and after a minute I hear my neighbor in her sleep let out a quick ugh sound. Then, almost as if she were made to feel comfortable or something she sighs, "Oh." And that's all I heard. I know I'm next, and I feel completely helpless against whatever this thing is. The same way that earlier I had felt that, shut up and get in bed, feeling, I could feel now that it would be a bad idea to scream and make my non-cooperation known, so I stayed silent. The orb went over my room, but did not signal. It must have seen that I was not asleep and moved past me to the last room. Then suddenly, the guy that prepares our breakfast and stuff for the lodge turns on the generators so he could make breakfast. Right when he does this, I hear the same beeps as I did at the beginning of the experience, and all of the beings are gone. Then, everyone starts to wake up at the same exact time. Last part. Now I'm wondering, when I go outside, are some of the people in the group going to be missing? Dead? Zombified? So I step outside and go into the breakfast room and most everyone is already in there and they're just acting normal. Nobody else even realized anything had happened. I asked them all and every single person said they slept the whole night through. In fact, out of everyone there, not one person got up to drink water. Not one person got up to go to the bathroom. Not one person snored. The next night I heard people doing all of those things. The only thing I can think is that they had some sort of trance put on them to keep them asleep, and I somehow wasn't affected. Only one woman there said she woke up in the middle of the night and felt very dazed. She told me that she looked at their clock and it was 3 a.m., but that it looked like broad daylight through the curtain. Only she agreed that something strange took place. I am telling about the encounter with the goatwalker. Am tenting in North Minnesota, early winter, tame when is comparison to my home. Am with stepbrother and stepfather, Alaska, old dog I have since just 5. Day is normal. Alaska quiet, stepbrother loud. We fish, start fire and cook. Forget we am not having water. Stepfather tell to me, get water for us, there are a wells mile or so down trail. Stepbrother me and Alaska walk down trail in dark. Far from town, so night is very dark but sky bright. Stepbrother is spoiled. 100 meters from camp, he says he is tired. I tell him go back. He takes flashlight and storm off. Just me in Alaska, old friends from home. Hear weird animal noise. Not abnormal to hearing animals in North Minnesota, but was wrong animal for woods. Gravel scraping. Alaska is obviously nervous. Strong-minded dog, so am bothered. Dog yip and snarl, only yip at weird animal. Alaska am know well of animals and how to smell, am more bothered. Rest of walk silent. Alaska am always to stop, look back. Begin to think stepbrother do tricks, but too impatient. Arrive at well and pump old lever, make creaking like injured animal. Very uneasy now. Dog hide behind me, normally brave to stand in front and growl. Fill jugs with metallic water. Cannot see in darkness, was only make way by light from sky and shape of woods. Make way back, difficult to carry many jugs with only so many hands. Dog yips again, snarl and whine. Can now see figure on trail ahead. Figure not moving, staring into woods. Obviously human, but Alaska would be eager to meet stranger. Cough loudly so figure can hear. Oh. You are passing me earlier, man say. Did not see or hear anyone. Can hear dog breath but man making of no sound. Odd animal sound again. Came from man. Ask him where he is stay, his tent only couple sights from us. He hear water slosh from jug, he say, offer to help carry. Reluctantly agree. Alaska yip at another noise. Man take jug, very rough from 10,000 day with shovel and trowel. He say is no problem, always eager to giving help. Alaska on other side of me from man, dog sniffing well curious. Notice smell like farm. Not rude enough to ask questions. Can see campfire through tree. Sudden anxiety is overtaking of me. Desire to tell man he am not have to come all the way, but afraid. Why, am never having problems with girls or boss. Cannot bring self to look sideways to man, but feeling something wrong. Fire close enough to throw shadow. Can see step family but not face. No talking or sound, only from fire. Overwhelming fear, metal, and farm smell in nostrils. Realize it remind me of home when dad bleeding himself like pig in barn for suicide. Still afraid and ill from memory. Turn to look to man. His eye are white all over. Yell. He yell. Animal sound. Dog bark. Family yell. Man say what? A bear? What is all of the yell? Sound terribly afraid. Realize he am blind. Joke I am have rock and shoe, but confess, I am not think you am blind. Man laugh and say yes, but should be obvious. Animal sound again. In full firelight now, can see animal near man. What is that? He say oh, am I seeing goat? Realize I am never hearing a goat before in Alaska, never smell, so is afraid. Goat make sound again. Laugh again to self for foolish. Man hand me jug. Introduce man to family, family to man. Man hobble off to tent led by goat though night. And end my story of goat walker.
The remains of a girl who became intoxicated and got lost in the catacombs below Odessa in Ukraine during a New Year's party from wandering down there in a drunken state. The catacombs span 2,500 kilometers. 1,550 miles. Her body was found in 2005 by urban explorers who then reported their finding to the police, but they refused, and eventually took her out 2 years later. Can you imagine it? Walking alone in utter darkness, just your hand on the wall. Your mouth dry from dehydration, your throat and lungs burning from the rank air and the countless hours of screaming for help. Your feet blistered messes and your legs sore to the point of exhaustion. Just walking. Nothing around you but solid darkness and cold damp walls in every direction. You'd have so much time to reflect on your life, everyone you've known, every event replaying over in your head. Somewhere along the line it hits you, you aren't getting out. I wonder if she broke down and stopped moving on, giving in to despair or dehydration, sobbing to herself as she slumped to the cold hard ground. Nothing to comfort her, nothing to give hope. Or perhaps she kept going until she physically could not, driven by either the hallucinations that gave her false promise of salvation, or by the sheer will to live, keeping her going until she finally collapsed from exhaustion and dehydration. I also wonder if the rats started to eat her before she was completely dead. Also a map of the catacombs.
I'll go back to posting non-Greentext if that's okay. Here's one from just south of the Navajo Nation. Growing up, I lived in northeastern Arizona. Literally about 5 miles south of the Navajo Reservation in Winslow, or the Res as everyone called it. Naturally, being that close to the Res, skinwalkers were a huge topic of conversation amongst the locals and we all took it very seriously. I have my own personal story. When I was about 15 or 16, my brother had a girlfriend that lived in a small community south of Winslow called Starlight Pines, about 25 miles away from our home. Well, we drove out to go see her one day. And about 15 miles out, we saw a native guy standing on the side of the road. This was quite odd because the Res was north of town. It was rare to see anyone on foot south of town because it's just desert and forest for literally 80 miles. Anyway, we passed this guy on the side of the road. Flannel shirt. Jeans. Nothing striking about him. We got to Starlight Pines and hung out with my brother's girlfriend and her family. It was well into the night when we decided to head back home. My brother and I hopped in his truck, a Chevy S10, and drove back the way we came. We saw the native dude again, in the same spot as before. He was still just standing there. I remember thinking, that dude is crazy standing out there all day and into the night. What's he doing? Right as we pass him we hear a loud bang from the back of the truck. At first I thought we hit an animal, but I hadn't felt anything that we'd run over. I turned around and looked out the back window. My brother started to slow down, thinking there may be something wrong with the truck. In the shining brake lights I see the native guy chasing after us. We are easily going 55 to 60 at this point as we were about to stop. The guy is in the road, literally feet behind us. I scream at my brother not to stop. "Gun it, man. Gun it." He does, but since it was a Chevy S10 it had a speed governor on it that capped at 80. For 2 solid miles this guy keeps up with us. We are seriously freaking out. I asked my brother, what if we don't make it back to town? Those 2 miles seemed to stretch forever, but then I looked back and he was gone. We got home, booked it into the house and told our parents. Next morning, I get up to head somewhere and look at my brother's truck thinking about the night before. I wondered what the loud bang was. I inspected the truck, which was covered in dust. In the dust, I saw a streaked handprint down the back end of the truck. I never went out there again.
Every time I post these people say I'm LARPing. Okay, here goes. B12. Live in shithole town in Arkansas. Always have burn nights in our burn barrel. Great grandma had a bunch of creepy dolls that we think were haunting the house. So we burned them. We'll post about those happenings after this. Anyway, dad and mom were sauced, smoking weed inside. I decide go back out to the fire to chill and rub fireflies on my arms. I'm all alone. Dogs won't follow me for some reason. Standing in gravel carport. Dogs are just barking, one is whining. Wonder WTF they're barking at. Squint to see the edge of the yard. Had a bunch of uninhabited land and a creek behind our house but was separated by a stone wall plus fence on top. See what looks like a pale humanoid. Had no face or fingers or toes. Looked like a squid kind of. At least the head did. Was about 6 feet tall. It just stayed there completely motionless. Never made any movement or sound. Head started to hurt, vision blurred. I pass out. Wake up in the bathtub in different clothes. An outfit I never even owned actually. Was about midnight when I woke up. Had a dream about the Baldur's Gate game I was currently playing for some reason. In the dream I was absorbed by the gelatin cube enemies in the game. For some reason was scared but the aroused Parents and friends never believed me. We'll continue with spooks about the house and the ghosts in it, and various UFOs me and my family have seen in the area. Maybe even post about the other spooks in other states. House we lived in was definitely haunted. Used to be part of a larger house that enveloped the whole block. Was a slave-owning plantation. One night playing Vice City, and have to pee. Go from my room to the bathroom and on the way see a ghost of an old lady. She was wearing a pink silk dress with sunflowers on it, looked almost Japanese, but the old lady ghost was white. She had no hands but was wearing matching pink silk slippers/shoes. She also had no eyes, just dark holes. She reached up at me. Instinct takes over. I scream as loud as I can and run through her. Was very cold and icy inside her. I go inside the bathroom and shut and lock the door. Scream for my mommy. Since I locked the door like a dumbass, she couldn't even get in. When we first moved into the house, she had so many dolls. One in particular was very creepy. It was an angel made of ceramic. I was trying to sleep on the couch and the doll had her hands out like she was holding something. In her hands, a glowing ball of blue light. I remember feeling very peaceful and went straight to sleep. Now here's the creepy part. Next day, think I like sleeping in darkness more. Look for the plug in a nearby wall socket, to unplug the doll. It had no lights of any sort or any cords running to it. Would often swim at night in our inflatable pool. Was very humid and hot in the summers. If you've been to Arkansas you would know. Laying back on a floaty, looking at the clear sky. Saw what looked like a rocket fly across the sky. It was very bright and went faster than any plane I've ever seen in my life. Was slower than a shooting star though. Some say it was meteor or satellite or even the ISS. Went on pretty particular path, so maybe they're right, but it gave me a creepy vibe. Second UFO I saw in Arkansas. Be driving with my mom to McDonald's. Wanted some late night burgers, nuggets and fries. Don't worry, I'm not fat and never will be. See a triangle shaped UFO above us. It keeps warping. In a triangle formation. Like it'd be here, then there, and then in another place. But only in a triangle shape. We start talking about it. Dad is like, yeah, whatever. He was always a skeptic until he saw a ghost of his friend that committed self-end. We'll post about that later. Anyway, after warping around for a while, UFO goes to center of triangle formation. Each of the three lights shoots off. Each in the direction of the triangle formation it was making earlier. Could be military shit, who knows. Okay, I'll post the rest of spooky shit now. Definitely not everything that's happened to me. Will post lesser spooks if I feel like it. Dad lived in girlfriend's house. Her mom committed self-end because her brother died years ago and she couldn't take it anymore. Since she killed herself, so did her bye. Dad goes out for dinner. Friend says, you go on without me, you'll see me when you get back. When dad gets back, friend is hanging in closet, dead. Dad isn't afraid of the dark. So he's chillin' in the dark of a dead man's house. Sees the guy's ghost with no eyes. Walks into a mirror in the hallway. Later that night, or just later, he had a dream about the guy who killed himself. Kept saying, you gotta get my eyes back, my eyes. Apparently his eyes were donated to a kid in California so he could regain his sight. Gonna read others' posts, then I'll post more. Let me know what you think, Anons. Okay. Was making food, but whatever. I think I can post this before it burns. B23. Living in California. Live up in some hills in the Bay Area. Smoking a bowl on my back porch. Porch light is out so it's really dark. Hear footsteps about 20 to 30 feet down the hill of my yard. Sounded like someone wearing shoes, definitely human sounding. Used the light on my LG smartphone. Couldn't see shit. Could still hear the footsteps now getting closer. Say fuck that and go inside, lock door. Wasn't allowed to smoke inside, was my family's house. Say fuck it and smoke weed in the garage. Can hear still someone crunching around in my yard. Yard was very big and slanted, so you could easily lay down or hide behind a tree. I come back out with a more powerful light, and my bastard sword. Scream at the top of my lungs and charge the tree where I heard footsteps. Start chopping at the tree, looping branches off. Be full-blown autismo and say get the fuck off my property or I'll cut your head off, rape your dead body. Heard someone run away into the neighbor's bushes. Neighbor was super old and retired, so it wasn't him. Couldn't shine light in time, whoever or whatever it was very fast. A couple nights later I saw a pale naked humanoid, kind of like in my previous post, jump my other neighbor's fence. Saw that one from my bedroom though, which was in the garage. I built it myself, it was a makeshift room.
I recently moved into a new apartment, and having very little money, had to settle for the only habitable place in a row of almost derelict buildings. The street was all but abandoned, but I'm pretty sure there were squatters 2 doors down. My building was the only one not boarded up, and compared to the others, it had potential. There was no electricity when I moved in, no curtains, and no carpets, but at least the water was running. It was a particularly tough time in my life, which I won't go into, and I was grateful for a fresh start. I could really make a go of it here once I got some furniture in. The first night, I decided to sleep there, even without a mattress and only a few candles to find my way around, although I could have probably found the bathroom by smell alone. After setting up camp in what I suppose was the living room, I ticked into a gourmet meal consisting of cold beans and dry crackers, promising myself that once the sun came up, things would seem more homely and I could start unpacking. After exploring the shelves and cupboards for treasure, and finding only a handful of those plastic curtain pegs and a show box full of old rent books, presumably left behind by the landlord, I decided to perch myself in a cummer and use my jacket as a makeshift bed. Trying to sleep hunched over with nothing to look at but a bare, pitch-black window wasn't easy, and the thought of what must be lurking out there on the old industrial estate kept my attention firmly on that window the entire night. Needless to say, I didn't sleep much and decided to look around some more. I found a box of old sepia photos in the fireplace, each with 6 people standing at the same window, mouths open, and a pale shape in the reflection that I couldn't quite make out. I decided to take my mind off it, since these old photos give me the creeps anyway. By the second night, I was starting to feel more comfortable in the old place, and although most of my stuff was still in boxes, and I still had no furniture, carpets, or curtains, the daylight had given me the chance to explore properly, and I spent most of my time planning how it would eventually look. I'd even nailed an old blanket over that window to keep any prying eyes out, and to stop my imagination running wild. By candlelight, I occupied myself by reading the faint scrawlings in the old rent books I found, since it was the only form of entertainment available. But what I found was quite interesting. Dating back around 5 years, were 6 books in total, 1 for each tenant, and in every one, just a single entry: rent and bond paid for 1 month. Then nothing but blank pages. Something wasn't right. All 6 previous tenants stayed only a month, or less. Feeling somewhat creeped out, I decided to take a piss before my last candle disappeared completely, and made my way across the hall to that awful bathroom, watching my shadow keenly dance along the peeling walls ahead of me, until we met again at a heavy wooden door. I covered my mouth and walked in. The stench was so thick I could taste it, and as I unzipped my pants, The last candle went out. Now, to this day I'm not sure where I pissed exactly, but I can tell you it was the fastest piss I'd ever taken. Not only was I in pitch darkness, but I could only hold my breath for so long. I ran out of there as fast as I could. But where was I running to? The realization came that I had no candles left, and with it, a thick blackness enveloped the walls, and the once flickering glow of the apartment had abandoned me. The hollow creak of the floorboards began to sound like whispers, and the peeling damp on every surface felt alive to the touch as I blindly ran my hand along the wall. Feeling a familiar bump, I pushed open the living room door and made my way carefully towards the window. Maybe a street light or passing car would light the room. If I could just remove the blanket I'd nailed up earlier. That window, which had made me so uncomfortable, was now my only hope for light. Reaching my hand through the darkness to pull the blanket away, I felt only a cold pane of glass. The blanket was gone, and as my eyes adjusted, I saw it. On the other side of the bare black window, something pale and silent, its mouth open, waiting for my next move. Live on the outskirts of a tiny mountain town in Kentucky. Main part of the town is at the base of our tinier mountain. One road swerves up mountain. Houses spaced every couple hundred yards. At the top is a reservoir/man-made lake, stocked with plenty of fish. River flows down mountain, from reservoir, through town and into a larger natural lake. My house is second highest on the mountain. River flows right through my backyard. Best friend, Leroy, lives up the road in the highest house. Fishing with Leroy in the woods between our houses back in May, around midnight. 1 a.m., perched on a rock midstream, 2 or 3 lines at a time. Deep river, Leroy sitting over the river in the branches of some trees, trying to get some carp to come out of the roots and bite. Crazy mad howling from deeper in the woods. Leroy nearly falls out of the tree, howling followed by growling and snarling. Couldn't be more than a couple hundred yards from us. Downstream, Leroy and I flash our lights at each other, stare at each other listening for 5 or so minutes. Finally, Leroy says, "Damn, that was one hungry bobcat." We laugh. I'm still scared crapless though. About an hour later, packing up, I'm stuffing some carp and base into a cooler. Leroy's trying to get out of the tree. The base of the tree Leroy's in is on the other side of the river. He'd have to get out and then wade through the river and get to the other side where our houses/the road is. Can't see him. Just hear him struggling in the brush. Hear the howl again and him scream. Andrew, rip the Bowie knife out of the tackle box and dash across the river to get him. He's bugging out on the other side of the river. The howling is crazy loud. Finally get across, light our oil lantern, and toss it into the bushes. Glass breaks. Fire erupts from it. Catches some bushes on fire. Can see Leroy backed against the tree. Nose is bleeding, and there are some scrapes on his arm. Whatever it was is gone. Stomp out the fire. Nope the hell out of there. As we're running, Leroy is hollering, "That wasn't no damn bobcat. That wasn't no damn bobcat." My house is closer. We run onto my porch, wake up my girlfriend, tell her to call the sheriff. Leroy's shirt is ripped up. Tell him to take it off. Scratches and shit all up his chest. On his chest is a big red mark, similar to a human hand's, as if he had been slapped crazy hard. Can even make out the individual fingers. At the end of where each finger would be is a long gash, as if the thing had freaking claws. Gather our wits. Try to calm down and rationalize it as some kind of pink kid. I'm worried it's a psycho. Penitentiary 1 county over. Grab some guns and lanterns. Not waiting on Sheriff to get up here, we left our cooler and fishing gear. Anyways, Uncle Chokey, my neighbor, not my uncle or his real name, just what folks in town call him, had heard us hollering, came out with his gun and lantern to get back to the river, find my gear. Leroy's is on other side of river still. Cooler is knocked over. Fish are flopping around on the ground. Neither of us remember kicking it over. Several of the fish are missing. We had caught 9 or 10. There were only 3 or 4 left flopping around, too far away from the river. Would have killed themselves before they flopped back into the water. Toss fish back into water. We don't care at this point. Plenty of others wade back across river. Uncle Chokey's losing his wits behind us. He's old, about mid to late 70s, mumbling under his breath. Kind of unsettling. Get to where Leroy was attacked. Find his gear, check the mud. See mine and his boot prints. Damn human bare footprints. Leroy and I look at each other. Freaking pale as hell. Uncle Chokey starts yelling into the woods. Hey you punks, get out here for I feel ya. Ain't no time to be slumping round the woods. No howling, nothing. Head downstream to where we first heard the howling. Mud turns to grass and brush. Loose tracks. Find bushes where it happened. Deer freaking mutilated, lying on ground. Front legs gone. Chest ripped open. Tears all in its skin. Leroy and I heave. Uncle Chokey hollers, damn thing is still alive. Sure enough, poor doe is still blinking. Pupils dilated more than anything I've ever seen. As if there weren't anything but pupil. Smell of innards is overwhelming. Leroy and I still heaving. Uncle Chokey puts it out with his 30-06. Rifle blast echoes through the whole mountain. Hear howling again. Way far off though, Uncle Chokey's hollering again. Don't let me catch you boys. This ain't right. Ya, LL can get jail time for this, etc. Chokey's hollering. Elbow Leroy and shine my lantern in front of us. Footprints again. Leroy shut up. Look here. Follow prints back into the woods. At this point, Sheriff Lork has caught up with us. Prints are going the other way, towards the bushes. Really what we're doing is heading towards where the thing came from, not where it had headed. Could be back where it was, though. Haven't howled since Chokey shot. Lork thinks it's a good idea to shoot again. Chokey shoots a birch a bit off from our footprint path. Thing freaking howls from a couple yards behind us. All of us lose our crap. I throw my other lantern into the bushes. Like last time, fire breaks out again. All of us catch a glimpse of a pale, completely hairless man dashing through the woods, away from us. All of us but Lork freaking fire in its direction, howling getting further and further away. Lork freaking out, don't shoot, don't shoot. Leroy, Chokey and I unload our rifles/shotguns. All 4 of us look at each other in our lantern light. Scared crapless, everyone reloads. Walk back out of the woods. Pick up our crap. Go home for the night. Next day all 3 sheriffs, me and Leroy, Chokey, and some other folks head back into the woods. Deer is gone. Find the tree Chokey shot. A tree behind where we had all stood and shot wildly at the thing is scratched and cut up. Obvious not deer rubbings. These are deep slashes. Find these on nearly all of the trees behind the tree Chokey had shot. The thing had been following us. Head through the brush and search in the direction the thing had ran. Find some bullet holes in the trees where we had shot after it. In the brush and grass, find what looks like a pig run. Grass/brush, pushed away to the side, sort of like a path. Blood in it. We had either hit it, or this is what the way it dragged that deer. Follow pig run single file. Leroy in front, followed by me, deputy sheriff. Some kid like 19. Chokey, other deputy, and finally Lork. All of us have rifles loaded and ready. Pig Run leads all the way to the edge of the woods. At the end is the edge of the mountain. Drops almost immediately, like 90 degrees. Endless valley of trees and shit. Nobody lives there. Nobody goes there. Nobody owns this land. Only people who head back there are moonshiners and hunters. Too far down to see if the thing is down there. Freaking nope it out of the woods. Sheriff calls search off. Only way for the thing to get back up the mountain and into our woods is through the town. Leroy and I try to shrug it off. Still scared shitless. Chokey in the bar in town, always telling the stories to traveling hikers of the psycho in the woods. And to never cross the river. Freaking nobody crosses the river anymore. Leroy and I still fish in that same place. Can sometimes hear that howling again. Never hear it coming from our side of the river. Leroy's scratches were treated at the hospital a few counties over as animal wounds. We aren't the only people in town that have cited it, but the only people who've been attacked by it. Even some of the hikers come back to town talking about some creepy-ass guy staring at them from the other side of the river. Pick as related as I can get. No eye hands. Yo, I just found some stock pictures real quick on Google. Like I said, didn't see its face, so I doubt it's anything like that. When I found it, I saw some related stuff about mythology and Paleman. May look at it later. Freaking never going out looking for that thing again though. Leroy still has faint scars on his chest from where it gauged him. We still fish at that same spot, but never cross the river. And we always bring our guns. Come to think of it, I haven't gone back in a woods without something that explodes since. Chokey still pokes fun at us for getting sick over that deer though. For real, that may have been the worst part. I've hunted, killed, skinned and cleaned her plenty of times before, but I've never seen one so mutilated in my life. And this thing didn't smell like any other dead deer. This smell was rotten. It may have been a coincidence because it had been out for several hours dying, but shit it reeked. Uncle Chokey is one funny old coot. We have hikers that come off the Appalachian Trail into town to sleep and chill at the bar, and he tells every one of them, don't you cross that river, boy. There's a psycho lives in that part of the woods. You get any trouble from him, you go knocking on one of the last two houses on that road. They know how to take care of him. But yeah, if somebody ever came to my door saying that psycho was after them, I'd have to tell them to screw off back to town and not lure him to my house. I sure hope he never messes with us again. Leroy and I still have a tree stand over on that side of the woods. We've never gone back for it, even in broad daylight. I'm still too scared to cross that river. Some guys from town, moonshiners, say they head over there all the time to their shack. Never seen any psycho. Thinks Chokey's a loon. They've admitted to seeing slashes in trees and pig runs, though we don't have hogs that high in the mountains. Maybe one day I'll get a group of 20 or so guys to go and get my tree stand.
This is my first time sharing this story and is a bit lengthy, so bear with me. Pick slightly relevant. Be 13 years old, me in Boy Scouts circa 2006. On a Innawoods outing in central Wisconsin. Be about 12 scouts in our troop. Typical chubby geeky fruitcakes from high school. Just another weekend with these assholes in late September. Cloudy weather leaves starting to fall. Who the fuck cares, just setting the mood. At a state park that has some burial mounds. Pretty damn rural in this part of the state. About an hour drive from nearest town. Arrive on a Friday night about 6:30 or 7 p.m. Get to campsite and go through usual setup bullshit. Probably going to do some stuff toward rank advancement and whatnot. Should be pretty chill weekend. I have my awesome multi-tool that I carry everywhere. Badass 13 years old me. New fruitcakes soon find out that there are burial mounds on the land where the campground is. Told by adults not to mess around with them. Their main concern being that they're off trail and that it would be disrespectful. The mounds are unmarked as they are scattered all over the area. Weird old groundskeeper dude who lives in a shack near the entrance of the park tells us where some are not too far from our site if we wanted to walk out there Saturday afternoon to see them. Older scouts always trying to fuck with the younger ones with lame stories of monsters. Say that people will hear whispering from the brush and trees. Say that sometimes shadows will be seen along tree lines. I play it cool and act like it doesn't bother me. Our troop had monsters called wampuses and hodigs. Pretty much obscure references to Native American legends. We were told that they threw sticks at you if you went anywhere by yourself. Reflecting now, may now be a diluted version of skinwalkers or wendigos. Spooks really just used as incentive to use buddy system when going out. One new kid with Asperger's who just crossed over from Cub Scouts latches onto the idea of them. Becomes so paranoid that the leaders end up calling his parents to take him home. He leaves the first night due to his hysterics. We all get lectured about not being little cocks to people like that. TBH, the kid could get worked up about a lot of stuff and it was funny as hell. First night after setup around 10 p.m. we are sitting at a picnic table. Light from propane lanterns, eating popcorn and Kool-Aid. Playing Egyptian Rats Crew and making jokes about the Wampus. Saturday. It's a cool but sunny day and everyone's just chilling doing stuff for their rank or building camp gadgets. We all walk over as a troop with the leaders to see the burial mounds. A bit underwhelming as all they really are mounds of dirt. They've been taken over by trees and brush, though. Can see them scattered throughout the area with what the dense forest will allow. Eerie feelings as it is. Saturday post-dinner, we like to play games. Play in the vicinity of the campsite and surrounding woods. Our troop had a game called Ghost in the Graveyard. Pretty much a hide-and-seek type game where everyone hides and has to make it to a safe zone before the ghost finds you. Anyway, we adopted it to have more than one ghost. Turned it into the Border Patrol and Mexicans. Call it Mexican Border Cross. We are a bunch of racist fags but don't even know it. Jokingly call it Freedom Sprint to be politically correct. Anyway, we have our awesome game and we're having a good time. I'm one of the Mexicans and I'm with 3 other guys, J, Z, and M. We decided to go off and hide far away from the group and double around. Come onto an old trail that is nearby but not maintained. Perhaps an old maintenance trail down to one of the kettles. Anyway, we are walking along the trail. The woods are much different at night even if you are familiar with the area. We all have flashlights, 2 of us have walking sticks. Walking down the trail. Can still faintly hear the shouting from the activities near the camp. Aren't miles away, but several hundred yards away through dense forest. Slinking along trail parallel to the camp when shit started to happen. Almost instantly all 4 of us were overcome with a sense of dread. We just felt nauseous, all of us did. The forest is quiet, but it's fall and most animals are migrating south for the winter. It's partly cloudy now, and the trees obscure the moonlight. One of the tenderfoots starts whining to go back. We continue along slowly despite feeling sick and strange. 3 of us had our flashlights pointed down what was supposed to be the trail. At this point we hear rustling to our left about 15 yards up the trail. The raging imagination of adolescence, the collective sense of dread, and the sudden noise made us all seize with terror. It's just a doe that we spooked, nothing more. It's just a rabbit. I am going to explain what it is the 4 of us saw cross the trail as objectively as I can. It was a humanoid, but walked on all 4s. It had its ass stuck up in the air while it walked. It was slender and looked malnourished. It was pale, not like white, but a filthy off-white pigment. It had sparse, dirty hair that covered its body. Its eyes were beet-ass red. It offhandedly acknowledged us. It hooped once and then screamed and lumbered off into the woods. There is a B-movie called Stro. I suggest watching it if you're into B-movie horror. It's the best thing I can offer to help you visualize what it was we saw. The picture posted is what I would show you if you asked me. Hysterical and beyond all comprehension of what just happened, we immediately ran back to camp, cutting through the woods. We ignored sticks hitting our faces and tripping over roots and mounds. We were in flight mode and adrenaline was having us haul ass back to humans. Upon returning to camp, everyone else had sort of calmed down and had given up looking for us. They were just sitting around the fire talking and staring at a fire like dudes around a fire do. We, out of breath and on the verge of tears, M and Z being two of the eldest kids in our troop, draw their concern. No one wants to say anything about what had just happened. Mainly because we were frightened, didn't know how to explain it, or that if anyone would believe us. M tells everyone that we thought we heard a bear growl. It is fall and black bears are common in our area, so it was believable. J, Z, and I didn't protest. One of the leaders makes us lock up the trailer and to bear-proof some of the food. Our outings always consisted of practical jokes on one another. The amount of times we have tried to scare one another created a sense of distrust in matters like that. The younger kids would possibly believe it, but they were already a bit on edge enough due to the wampuses and hotigs. Jay is my older cousin, and we sometimes will talk about it, but neither of us have never really been comfortable doing so. There was no explanation for what we saw, all we had was our experience. Camping trips were always a little more solemn after that, and we didn't go back to that specific one as often anymore. The few times we would, during any season, there was always a sense of unease going into the woods alone. Z and M left within the year and they were off to college. J about a year after. I told my dad about it years later and he was a bit impassive about it. I still don't know how to properly show someone what it was we saw and have them feel like it was like to be there.